Okay, so there's a very large evolution in media happening. Most people don't know this because really it's happening in my own perception. But I'm going to share that perception with you, and I'm going to talk about why it's so important that there is such a huge evolution in media happening. Now, first I want to differentiate. Obviously, media is changing in that, because distribution has changed so much and because censorship has become an issue and because different voices are kind of battling with one another, there's been some changes, right? That's been obvious, right? So even the way things have gone more to the video end, or there's a lot more podcasts, these things are happening. But this is not quite the evolution that I'm talking about. Those are small scale changes in the way the format is. I'm talking about a massive, huge upheaval of the way we've done media as humans for such a long time. And this upheaval is causing us to produce a form of media that we call conscious media that is allowing us to question things in such a radically different way that it actually relates current affairs and things that happen in our world to a deeper aspect of ourselves, making what we're seeing out there a lot more, sort of useful to our journey. Now, first what I want to do is I want to get into mainstream media and alternative media as, the forms of media that have been out there for such a long time. So when we're talking about mainstream media, typically what we talk about is, the corporate owned, right? So it's that media that's owned by, a small group of companies, and it's influenced by them and their shareholders and, the cabal and the deep state and all that sort of stuff. Typically, right, we have a government influence. This is something not a lot of people know about, is that a lot of mainstream media outlets actually get pressure from the government to, sort of voice things in a certain way. Or if there's a specific story they don't want, any coverage on or anything talked about in a specific way, they're actually told, hey, don't talk about that one too much, right? So in this form of media, mainstream media, we have what in essence is very limited viewpoints that come through a very thin channel of information. And it's typically all sent down by the same press release type source, right? So you have a source that's essentially saying, okay, here's all the news you have to choose from, and here are the narratives and the ways to go about it. This is why through mainstream media, you typically see those montages of people saying the same thing over and over again, and the script is exactly the same thing all the time. The same keywords, the same punchlines, the same narratives, it's all there. And again, the purpose for that is this is the form of media that is the control that takes place. So when it comes to mainstream media, it becomes obvious as to why a new form of media is needed, why an evolution is needed. Now, out of mainstream media, you also had alternative media that started to surface. Now, alternative media was typically more independent. So this meant that there weren't necessarily shareholders, really, really powerful elite sources that were pushing narratives and, hey, we need it to be like this and we need it to kind of sound like this to better our business strategies that are happening in the long term over here, or to better a specific political arena that we need. But at the same time, you sometimes do still have some corporate ownership or some political bias that does come through alternative media, because what happens is in a lot of cases, the narrative or what's talked about in some alternative media outlets is not all that different than what's talked about in the mainstream. It's just done through a slightly different voice. So at times you find yourself going, yeah, this is alternative media. I'm seeing some new things here, but there's something that's still kind of not quite there, right? That can happen in alternative media. And so both of these different forms of media, or different, outlets to where, media can come from, can be subject to bias, right? Whether it be politically or emotionally. So what we want to look at here is, even in alternative media, for example, right? And you start thinking about it. I'm not going to name names, but start thinking about some of the alternative media, the popular ones that, you see out there. How aggressively tilted to a certain political side are they? Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, whatever it may be, right? And what does that mean about the information you're now getting? You're now getting information that we look at the facts and we say, okay, here are the facts, but I need to now present this to you in a way that matches our political voice. So are you getting the full story? Are you getting specifically written scripts and narratives that fit a certain narrative that, again, may not give you the full story, that may have emotion involved, that is not allowing you to see entirely what this is about and what's going on, right? And so when you have that form of bias that takes place, we're not seeing, even through alternative media, we're not seeing the deep truth as to what's going on. Not only that, in a lot of cases, it riles people up emotionally. It gets them aggressive. It gets them in states of fear. It gets them in states where they're like, oh my God, this stuff's happening and we need to fight about it. We need to get involved with other people and create groups of people that fight amongst each other. This sort of toxic tribalism that's been taking place, and here in 2018, it's very prominent, right? Not only that, but a lot of these various things don't really have an action-oriented, i.e. what you can do or what the world can do as a solution to some of the things that are presented. Yes, on some cases we see, hey, this is going on and, there's a way to get involved over here, or, here's a solution that some people are working on. Sometimes that does happen, but for the most part, the media is presented as, okay, here's what happened, okay, through the bias, through the lens, through all this stuff. And then you go, oh man, I just found out that happened, but I don't even know what to do with that. I don't even know what that means for me. I don't know what am I supposed to do, right? So sometimes you don't have that, right? And that can be needed, that can be necessary in this whole evolution of media. And then so the other thing that we want to bring up here with regards to both of these is sometimes there is a lack of a deep meaning, of connecting a lot of dots as to what's going on, but ultimately bringing in our consciousness. Now, what's our consciousness? For those who don't know, our consciousness is our own understanding from a deep state of being of ourselves, of our world, what our place is within it, where we're growing and evolving to change our perceptions on this planet. And we're not just talking about small political differences and so forth, but really asking the deep, meaningful questions of, why does this stuff happen? What does it mean for us? How can we change this? What do we need to change about the way we perceive our world to create a world where we can thrive? What happens if we're able to have media that brings in deep meaning that says to you, do we really need to be doing things the way we're doing them? Because even alternative media in a lot of ways does not challenge us to think in ways that goes, okay, you know what? Yes, we have a financial system, but do we really need to be subject to the financial system in the sense that, do we need to be exchanging money all the time? Is that the end result for humanity, that this is the only thing we can do, is we have to exchange money to survive? There's no other thing we can do. There's no other possibility. And when we don't explore that deep possibility, we don't ever actually grow from that. We always just have everything kind of as it is. Different voices, different lenses, but it is as it is. Whereas the huge evolution in media that's taking place, we'll call it conscious media, right? And this is what we produce here. What this essentially is it takes a deep meaning, a deep understanding of what's going on in our world, current affairs, right? Stuff that's happening. Trump, for example, we did a video on just on this same setup over here, looking at the deep truth as to why Trump is president. That video received so many incredible comments of people saying, oh my gosh, this is like the greatest summary of what's actually going on from a deeper point of view, and it's helping me to understand and not lose faith in humanity. It's helping me to have hope for our future, for where we're going, for what's happening. Because instead of the chaos that we're seeing through alternative and mainstream media, of, oh my God, this battle with this person and this person's doing this and all these negative or angry people are doing this and blah, 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 and it's always a fight. We're bringing in this neutral lens and understanding of something like, for example, Trump's presidency, which is then saying, what does this actually mean for humanity? And you can see through the comments that this made a big impact on people, and much of conscious media does, because it challenges us to reflect, to question, to go deeper, to bring it into ourselves and to ask, how can we actually learn and grow as people, but also as society, so that we can move beyond a lot of the challenges that we face? Because when it comes down to it, right, these forms of media oftentimes create the exact same cycle that we've always been going through. The left-right paradigms, the battle of various groups of people going at each other, keeping everybody so emotionally engaged and distracted within the system that we have, thinking that these are the only ways that we can do things, and we have to stay in this world of like, okay, we go and we vote every 4 years, and we pay our taxes and we do all this stuff. We cannot step outside of that way of being when we're only challenged to think within that small confine of possibility. What conscious media challenges us to do is it says, okay, here's the confines. Now, what happens if we just started blowing holes in those confines and we started to let light in? And we started to see, okay, there's other possibilities, not just outside a left-right narrative, but as to what we're truly capable of and what's truly possible. And not only that, but it challenges us to explore deep meaning of who we truly are and what's going on and what things actually mean for us and our consciousness as individuals, which of course extends to a society. So conscious media will and is what will allow us to get out of the limited states of, left-right consciousness, of warring with each other, of battling with one another. We understand why people battle with one another through conscious media. Because instead of saying, oh, these people are battling because they disagree with these values of these people over here, instead we look at it in the sense of, okay, these people identify with their values. They think they are their values, but they're not. They're a soul living out a human experience, and their values are something that they buy into as something they think represents them, and then they fight for that. So when you see two people fighting, what's really happening is they're just battling their belief systems against one another. But they don't realize that they're not those belief systems. So when we can look at a situation and understand that it's not that the person's stupid, it's not that the person's an asshole or whatever it is we love to throw on people, we instead look at the situation and go, okay, I see where those people are actually coming from. And then we know how to move about the situation. We know how to get people to challenge what it is that they think and believe. And when we do that, we ultimately allow us to understand the truth of what's going on in our world. When you can see clearly why people are doing certain things, why things are happening, and the explanations aren't a fickle left-right paradigm, and they're not just, oh, this is about this emotion or that emotion, but it's actually about being able to see through the illusion and understand where people are coming from, why events happen, what they mean for humanity. Only when we begin to understand that can we then actually, from a higher state of consciousness, begin to make changes and choices that change our world. And that's why conscious media is so important in this massive evolution of media. And it's going to be up to us to stop supporting some of these other things via watching it and engaging with it and doing all this sort of stuff, and begin saying, you know what, I'm ready for a new world. Therefore, I'm ready for a new form of media. And we start to look at conscious media as something that actually challenges us to end the cycle that we've been caught up in for many, 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 many decades, probably even centuries, right? So challenge yourself. Ask yourself the question, am I ready for, really looking at conscious media and really seeing the difference between what's happening in these areas? And are these areas really even serving me to still always be engaged with them, right? There's plenty of things that we can do to get information from different places. But really we got to start looking at what we want to support if we want to change this world.